everybody. Welcome back to the Tipsy Ghosts. We're your tipsy hosts, Sarah, and Lindsay.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey. We went on a recent investigation.
A record-breaking
investigation. And why was it record-breaking?
It was the furthest we have ever driven.
For one night, like for just a couple of hours, and then turned around and came home.
Yeah. We've gone further. Salem was further, but that was an airplane. This was a car.
Very true.
We ventured into Illinois, and we went to Bartonville.
Which from Kansas City is what, like 6 hours? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Without stops.
Yes.
So we drove up 6 hours, went to like a 5-hour investigation, and drove back 6 hours.
In the rain.
We really did. Yeah.
Right. Why did we leave an hour early from the investigation, Boydston?
I was concerned for our safety.
It's true, though. There were like so many There was
a
mixture of tornadoes and thunderstorms. It was the real thorny situation. I don't know.
It was touch and go there driving back, huh?
It really was. I was.
Sarah had the worst of it.
I had a little bit of a sketchy drive.
But the reason is because she hit avoid floods, rightly so.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
On the maps, and it took her back roads.
Yes, I was driving through the world's smallest towns. I hit so many stop signs on the way home, which made that trip even longer. Yeah, there was not a gas station or a bathroom in sight.
Nothing open.
So guess what that means? I had to pee so bad. Mm-hmm. And this is TMI. I don't care. You guys got to hear. I had to pee so bad that there was nowhere to go. And I just pulled over at a stop sign.
You did.
Because you can't, there's no shoulders on the road. You just have to stop in the middle of the road and pray nobody comes.
It's a 2-lane country road.
And it's pouring down rain. And I just...
And you just peed.
Peed outside the door and came back in.
So I slept the whole way back. So I don't remember a lot of this. I remember waking up and you just are standing outside the door. I said, "What's happening?" And Boyson said, "Sarah has to pee." And I said, "Okay."
Oh, it was...
No judgments. I was like,
okay. So bad. It had already been like 2 hours. It was like 2 hours into it. And I'm like trying anyways to try to stay awake. And it was storming so bad. It was really kind of sketchy. There was animals running across the road everywhere. So many possums.
Yeah.
It was an ordeal. I was stressed. Okay. I was stressed. But
and then we finally get home.
We couldn't wait.
We get to Sarah's neighborhood where our cars are parked.
Yep.
At 6 a.m. And what happened when we pulled into the neighborhood?
Well, we might have ran out of gas.
We're literally in her neighborhood.
And it just put, stop.
I've never actually been in a car when it ran out of gas.
And it was my car.
It's, in my defense, Sarah saw it. It said 20 miles to empty.
It did. It lied. It lied to us. And like I mentioned, there was not really many gas stations in sight until you get not that far from Kansas City. By that point, we're like, it's got all these miles left. We can make it.
Yeah.
We did not. In fact,
spoiler alert, we did not make it.
Like not even a quarter mile to my house. So that was fun. We called my husband, woke him up, and he brought up the
He came to
tank.
our rescue. He sure did.
A little gas tank for us and filled it up. Worked out. It's our first
I still feel guilty about it, but
don't feel guilty.
I'm just glad it was in my neighborhood and not like in that podunk Chicago, or not Chicago, but Illinois. God, my brain.
Podunk, Chicago.
Real
Chicago's so rural.
Yeah, no.
Oh no!
Can you imagine in some small town? We would have to call one of the husbands, probably
in the middle of the night,
and mine because we don't have kids to leave at home sleeping.
That's true.
So come all the way up with gas.
Oh no!
It was eventful. It
was fun. It was a fun first time.
It was. And so where we went, and I don't know if you guys did any research before we got there, we were going to like an old psychiatric hospital, and it was not at all what I expected.
No.
Right. So when you say research, like I didn't look up the history on the place at all, but I looked up like the event that we were going to. Okay. So I knew beforehand that we weren't going to be going into these like
an actual like
asylum,
one building,
that we were going to be outside in the rain most of the night.
Now that I didn't realize we were going to be outside most of the time.
I didn't realize that at all.
That was a unique experience.
It was, because I didn't bring a hoodie. I just had like a jacket, and you can hear me with the recorder, and we'll talk about this later, but I kept putting the recorder up my sleeve.
Oh God, I bet that sounded good.
And I was like, "I'm sorry, but there's rain." And it's like
For future reference, the recorder's fine. Thank
It was
you,
fine.
but it's fine.
It was fine, but just me sliding it up my sleeve.
I did the same thing. I was telling her because I was trying to protect it from the rain.
Yes, I was
So I
worried.
think I made it worse though because my hand's over it and it's like I was like thinking I'm doing this really great thing, protecting it from
And our ears were like, that was not the right choice.
so loud.
All right, so I'm going to talk about this place. It's Peoria State Hospital, in case I haven't said that, in Bartonville, Illinois, which is near the city of Peoria, which is why it's called that.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense, right? All right, so way back when, there used to be 63 buildings that covered this place.
63 buildings.
It was like a little town.
Mm-hmm,
Its own
Big
community.
town.
There are only 12 of the 63 buildings that are still standing, so they have torn down a lot of it. But that's what I mean when I say it's not like your typical psychiatric hospital. So 63 buildings is what this
Used to be.
it used to be, right? So it is a very, very big area. There was lots of walking and crossing streets.
Yeah.
So the Peoria State Hospital was supposed to be an institution unlike anything else of its kind. It opened in 1902, and it was first initiated by the work of the Peoria Women's League, who had seen the kinds of treatments that were being used to treat the mentally ill at the time and did not think this was the best practice. So this place is pretty progressive, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but that's kind of the first way that it's progressive. A team of women were like, we need to do something about this.
Yeah. Love that.
And people listened to women.
That's even more progressive.
Wow. It's amazing.
Women having ideas has always happened. People listening to
That's
them.
right. There you go.
That's true. That's true. So they knew that there had to be a better way to help these people. So from the very beginning, they were like, we're going to build something that's different, that's going to actually treat the mentally ill. And they found Dr. George Zeller, who was a surgeon. He wasn't even a psychiatrist, but he was a surgeon. And he became the superintendent, but also they lovingly call him the father of the institution. And even the people there who were leading the ghost hunts, they talk very highly of him. So they still love him. So this hospital opened in 1902, and it was in service until 1973. The hospital was founded as a result of the Illinois General Assembly's provision for the establishment of the Illinois Asylum for the Incurable Insane in 1895. Essentially, they started construction in 1895, with the main building being completed in 1897, but it was never used because the structural integrity was compromised because there was abandoned mine shifts on the property. So they built this huge, beautiful building, because we saw pictures of it, and then tore it down.
Sad.
It was sad. In 1902, reconstruction began, and it was completed under the direction of Dr. George Zeller. And it was a cottage system plan originally for 33 buildings. So among these buildings were patient-like housing, but also caretaker housing for the nurses to stay in on site, a store, a power station, and even a communal utility building. It was originally called the Illinois Hospital for the Incurable Insane, which that inspires a lot of confidence for you to send somebody to. Let's go to the Incurable Hospital.
They didn't exactly have the most sensitive
No, they
or
did
politically
not.
correct names.
So they began operations on February 10th, 1902, and patients, like I said, were characterized as incurable,
Aw.
and they were transferred to Bartonville from other Illinois facilities. And there's a train that goes right through Bartonville.
It's always a train.
There's always a train. And they would literally just put these patients on the train, and they would get off the train and go right up the hill. So it's on this hill. So they called it the hospital on the hill. So in 1906, the hospital opened a training school for nurses. And from 1907 to 1909, the facility was known as the Illinois General Hospital for the Insane. So they took out the incurable.
Okay.
And then in 1909, they recommissioned it as the Peoria State Hospital. One of the cool things, some of this you guys remember from the presentation, they talked about the nurses, and Dr. Zeller didn't want to train the cruelty out of nursing. And I know that sounds bad, but back then, treatment for the mentally ill was not great, and it was inhumane. And so he would only hire brand new nurses, and he would train them how to be a nurse, basically, for them. And so that's why they had a training school for nurses. And part of their training was they had to be a patient for a day.
Yeah.
On the hospital's 25th anniversary in 1927, the population at that time was 2,650 patients. And they had, at that point, had a total of 13,510 patients that had come through the facility in the past 25 years.
It's a lot of patients.
So during this time, Dr. Zeller, like we said, was widely respected for his focus on therapeutic efforts. He crusaded for a better public understanding of the mentally ill, and he would even invite newspaper reporters and community members to visit the hospital so they could see for themselves what they were about. From 1943 until 1969, the hospital participated in the Department Affiliation Program for Psychiatric Nursing, which provided instruction in psychiatric nurses across the country for nursing students. So people were coming and studying how they were doing things and trying to implement that. He would find patients who were in undesirable situations, to put it nicely. And one of those was almshouses. So back then, you could basically get a stipend from the state for like $20, and you could call yourself like a house for mentally ill, but you wouldn't actually do anything and you wouldn't actually treat these people.
Mm-hmm.
So they were obviously not great living conditions. And we're going to talk about one specific case in a little bit. But he would go to these almshouses and find patients who were being treated terribly, and he'd put them on his train and they would come right along to the hospital. So he was like saving these people too. From 1917 until 1961, the hospital was operated by the Illinois Department of Public Welfare. And then in 1961, the Department of Mental Health was created, and they assumed responsibility of the institution from that point on. So Dr. Zeller, part of what was so progressive about this place was that he wanted to create a new kind of institution which treated people with mental illnesses in a humane way. So he took all the bars off the doors and windows, removed all types of restraints and straitjackets, and instituted new and holistic types of therapies, which in the early 1900s, this was like completely unheard of.
Yeah.
Even visiting and they were talking about it, I was just like amazed that they could get away with this. Like they were not locked up. And they just roamed like freely. There was a lake that they could just like go down to.
I had lots of questions for one of the leads about all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had one recording where we were like, but how?
I know. I'm like, but how did people not just leave?
Exactly.
And he said sometimes they did, but they would either come back or, not wander that far basically, because most of them knew that they were being treated well there. So he also mentioned that one way that they kind of looked after each other really was what it was. They looked after each other by buddying them up on different units and connected. But the way the building was set up was like the two, I don't even know how do you explain it, halls with one main hall in the middle, and that they would have one person on one end kind of looking after one on the other. And then that's how they kind of cared for each other too, which I thought was interesting.
I remember when we asked him, we were like, but how did they know that like people weren't running away and all this stuff? He goes, they did a head count every night. And we were like, that's it?
That's it. It worked for them. And I think that's great.
It's incredible to think about. And yes, you're right. It did work for them.
Yeah.
At that time, Dr. Zeller was considered pretty out there for refusing to lock his patients up and refusing to tie them to beds. And he had an open door policy, which meant that all patients were treated with human kindness and empathy. So like I said, lots of people were coming out to the hospital to kind of look at how they were doing things, including the medical boards, obviously. And Peoria State Hospital was considered number one in their treatments of some illnesses and their curative abilities of others. They also had the number one nursing program in the country for 34 of its 36 years of operation.
Oh, nice.
Dr. Zeller did die in 1938, but the hospital continued to run following his vision of non-imprisonment, non-restraint, non-sedation, and a strict 8-hour workday for the nurses. You clocked in, you clocked out. There was no overtime. You did not stay past when you were supposed to, again, to protect their burnout.
It is crazy to think about, like, did they not ever have a violent patient?
That's what I wanted to know. I'm like, because they said non-sedation. And so, like, I think chemical sedation.
Yeah, same.
And I'm like, you never had to sedate anyone? And it does say later, so they did have like a unit that was for the criminally insane. And those were the only two locked buildings.
Maybe they put some of their more violent people
probably
there because...
Well, criminally insane. They probably did something, got sentenced to court. So that's why they were locked up.
Yeah.
So the hospital finally closed its doors for good in 1973, which almost 40 years after Dr. Zeller's death. The closure was due to a combination of lack of funding and staffing. Despite the constant employees who would plead for funding and the ability to hire more employees, the state government was already on a crusade to close these lifelong type facilities. So this is kind of when deinstitutionalization was coming through. And they were like, people shouldn't be living in these places for the rest of their lives. Like, get them back out in the community. And so they started looking at Peoria because they were the number one hospital, which meant they had the most expensive facilities. So they used a lot of funding. They gradually started making it basically unsafe working conditions. They went from 1 to 3 nursing to patient ratio to 1 to 50 at its worst.
Oof.
So if you have one nurse for 50 patients, you think mistakes are going to happen.
I can't even Like my brain won't comprehend. How do you see in 8 hours? How do you see 50 patients and like do anything for them?
No. I feel like all you would be doing would be passing out meds because that's all you would have time for.
But you wouldn't be able to get to all 50.
No. So obviously mistakes started to happen when they had that unsafe of staffing conditions. And that's kind of how the state was like, this is not a safe place. And they shut them down, even though the state made it that way. Bureaucracy.
That never went away.
So at this point, the hospital, like I said, had 63 buildings that had been added throughout its years. But unfortunately, there was a taboo that came about after closure of the psych hospital because people think places like this are haunted and that they were
mistreated.
Evil spirits. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the right way to say that. Basically, the majority of these buildings were demolished because of those ghost stories. So only 12 to 13 remain. So the people who help lead this, which really they're volunteers for this state hospital, and they advocate for it. And they are very much about providing accurate history so that way they don't lose any more buildings. I don't know how to say that. Because there is so much rich history in this place. They do have one of the buildings is a museum. And you can go in there. We did not. You can see artifacts that have been donated throughout the years. At its peak, the hospital housed about 28 patients at one time. By 1972, when it closed, it had about 600 patients at that time. So after the hospital closed, like I said, the buildings were empty. Some were auctioned off, some were demolished. So like I said, 12 buildings are still there as of 2019, which I think they said it's still 12. They are all occupied. Like one is like a business. A couple are still owned by the Historical Society who, fund the ghost tours and the museums. There's a bar.
And that was part of the gymnasium.
That was part of the gym. So it's like it's almost like a college campus because it's so spread out, all these buildings. So there are two pretty famous patients that they like to talk about who came through. And one of those is Rhoda Derry. And she's at Cemetery 1. So there's 4 cemeteries. They did have a lot of patients here because they had a tuberculosis unit. So they did have a lot of patients who died, obviously, at this hospital. So Rhoda Derry, she's at Cemetery 1, and she had epilepsy, pica, and schizophrenia. And she was admitted from one of the almshouses that we talked about. And like I said, they did not treat her well. So she was sent to an almshouse and was there for 42 years before Dr. Zeller found her. She was pretty much treated like an animal. She spent her time naked and crouched inside a wooden box that was filled with straw. Like that was her bed. They called it a crib almost. And I mean, she went there as a grown adult. She had excrement that was in the box. So mice were in the box with her with nests. And she sat inside this box essentially for 42 years with her knees like pressed up against her body because she didn't have room and was covered in bruises from head to toe. She had gouged out both of her eyes. And she punched herself in the mouth, the jaw repeatedly to the point that she knocked out all of her teeth and bit off part of her tongue so she couldn't speak as well. So she maintained this position for so long that she had basically like contracted and her muscles were all
atrophied.
I can never say it. Thank you. And you knew it. And she was unable to walk. She was unable to move really at all. So 1904, right after opening, Dr. Zeller finds her and he learns about her. He learns about the decades of the inhumane treatment that she received, and he brought her to Peoria State Hospital right away. He built her a stroller / like a little buggy so she could like go outside and still be out with like all the patients. And she got to bathe daily, which had never happened. And she got to sleep in a bed for the first time in 40 plus years. She lived there for 2 years and she died in 1906, right before her 72nd birthday from tuberculosis. And she is buried on the grounds. And the second story is about a man in Cemetery 2. And he came off of the train to the hospital, but he was mute. He did not speak. He had paperwork with him, and it said that his occupation was a manual bookbinder. So that was his name, Manuel A. Bookbinder. And people lovingly called him Booker. So he was a gravedigger. That was part of this hospital, was that they would give the patients jobs because, I don't mind idle hands. It's not a good thing. So he tended the grounds, and he was a gravedigger, and he attended every single funeral or service of the patients, and he would cry and wail loudly at every single one. There is a kind of little lore story here where when Old Book, as they called him, died, it was said that his death was attended by hundreds of patients and nurses. Dr. Zeller was there. They were all crying at his funeral. And when they went to look in his casket, there was nothing.
Wow.
But they saw Booker there, clapping and crying along with them. So, of course, Dr. Zeller wrote about this in his book, Befriending the Barefoot. Barefoot?
Beefing the brief.
Oh, that's an actual word.
Like like barefoot, Bereft. Bereft, is that how it's called?
Bereft.
Okay, Befriending the Bereft. That is a hard book title.
I was like, where is she going?
It's a real word.
Yes, I know.
In my head, I have always read it as barefoot.
Oh, it's one of those Lindsay words.
It is one of those Lindsay words.
I love those.
So anyways, Dr. Zeller wrote this book, and he wrote about Bookbinder's funeral. So, of course, everybody was like, oh my gosh, what? This is crazy. And then he came out later, and he was like, yeah, no.
Gotcha.
As loving, he's basically saying he like exaggerated because he wanted people to understand how loved these patients were. So yes, he really did die on the grounds. He really did have a funeral with hundreds of people there, but he was
always in the casket.
He was always in the casket.
Okay, good.
So you can go and visit his grave, though.
Kind of.
Can you? They don't really know which one it is.
That's true. So that is what I've got for you. So we spent time at all the cemeteries. Let's go to one.
Okay. Well, we did go to one, I think a couple times, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've mentioned it's a public investigation, and obviously these are outside. So investigating is a little tricky. And really, we didn't spend like a ton of time with these places. So we did split up. And I can like hear each of you on my own recordings.
I was hurt that you wanted to split up. Did you catch that?
Yeah. I don't know why.
I said, Boydson wants to go off by herself. That is hurtful, but okay. So do you just want to do an EVP session and we have to be serious? And you were like, yeah.
Yeah. That is what I was.
It's the only way we'll be serious if we're not talking to each other.
That's true. I don't know why I was so offended, but I was.
So basically, it's our own personal vlogs.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yes, we went to 3 separate places. I sat by Rhoda's grave.
In both cemeteries. I went to the farthest point, just right up against the ravine.
Not the ravine.
Ooh, danger.
You will die, Boydston.
That's basically what they said.
Yeah, so a lot of these cemeteries back up to what apparently is a colossal ravine. It must be the size of Mount Helen. I don't know.
Yes.
But they're basically, it was like, if you go over this ravine, you will die.
Yes, they said you will die, and I will not try to save you. And I was like, is it that intense?
I'm guessing it is.
I don't think so. I was able to see like a babbling brook
Oh, okay.
while I was at the edge
adorable.
of one. So I don't know. But I, of course, I combined the names. I said ravine equals death. Davine.
Oh.
Got it.
Color me shocked that you went to the edge of danger.
Ooh.
They tell you not to go to the ravine, and you go right up to the ravine.
I mean, are you shocked though? They say don't sit in this furniture. Who sits in the furniture?
Yes, but normally
I don't
she's
like to
such
be
a
told
rule
what to do.
follower.
Yeah.
That's
That
so interesting.
That contradicts with your rule follower tendencies.
Huh.
Let's explore that later.
Let's talk later. My session will be later. I was asking questions, carrying on a one-sided conversation. I talked about how much I enjoy investigating. I was just going on and I was like, I really love investigating.
Aww.
And then I said, I can feel the sadness leaving my body.
Let's discuss that later too.
Then I waited a beat and I was like, are you sad?
Let the record show you have been with us. This is 9:45 at night. You've been with us since 1 p.m. and you were still having sadness in your body.
Aw.
Sometimes there's just always sadness until you're
I feel that.
investigating.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a response, and so I just kept on talking about things that made me happy. So then it starts to rain because it was raining almost all night.
Yeah, it was.
At the very end, I said, oh, there's a tree that looks like Bruno Mars.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Clever.
Clarify, please.
Trino Mars.
It was...
Did I do it? That was so good. Good job.
I am so proud.
Trino Mars.
It was a tree that didn't have any growth. It was like a tall but just flat.
He has lots of hair. I'm
That's what I was
confused.
picturing.
Listen.
Okay.
Okay. And then it had one little spout, and I was thinking in my mind, pinky finger to the sky. Just that
That's
little
where. Okay.
spout.
All right.
I was like, oh, the tree's Bruno Mars.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, you took a picture of Trino.
I knew I would need to explain this.
I
love it.
Absolutely did need to explain it because I am not understanding this.
It's a good picture.
That's Trino Mars.
There's Trino Mars. We had a different perspective. Look at that.
I probably have Trino too in my pictures and didn't realize. Okay. I shall tell you my vlog. Mine's short.
I want to hear your vlog.
Here it is. I acknowledge that it is spooky in the cemetery at night. I say nothing. Well, I tried to have a conversation with myself also. And apparently my favorite question this evening is, do you have any brothers and sisters?
I've never heard you ask that question.
I know. I probably asked it a dozen times this entire investigation. I was like, oh my God, shut up. I just couldn't think of anything to say to these people that might have been there. I'm like, well, they probably didn't work. I didn't know what to say. Do you have any brothers or sisters? That's what I said a million times. Guess what? Nobody answered me. They don't want to talk about it.
They're like, I'm an only child. Next question.
I hear Lindsay, and then I move on and I say, is rucking a combination of hiking and running?
What? Look at you.
And then really after that, the time was up and I excused myself while I was stepping over every single grave. Excuse me. Pardon me. Coming through.
I'm sorry.
I did.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That tracks. That tracks.
That made me laugh.
My recording starts out with listening to Sarah singing Taylor Swift in the background as she walks away. I sat down by Rhoda's grave and I actually was serious.
I tried.
I was
asked
asking questions. Thank you.
I talked to her about how sorry I was for what went on in her life and that I'm happy that she's able to find peace here and that things are different nowadays and, you know, how we treat mental health. So Rhoda and I had a good talk. Cemetery 2.
Boydston, you're up.
I start out saying, this is where Booker is. No, it was Book. Booker is Booker T. Washington. And that's when Lindsay laughs at me and says, isn't that the guy that invented peanuts?
Who invents peanuts?
I corrected myself.
She then corrected herself. She's like, no, peanut butter.
And then I said peanuts already existed.
He
Booker.
invented a legume.
You had to wait for it. Okay, I corrected myself.
She did.
I realized that was a stupid thought. It's an inside thought, Lindsay.
I proceeded to the edge of the cemetery by the Devine.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
The Devine.
Had to process.
On the way, I tripped and I almost fell.
Oh, dang.
no.
I'm sad I missed it.
Then it started to rain fairly heavily.
Yes.
In there, though, I hear like a faint, soft, breathy exhale.
Okay.
That didn't...
Over the rain?
Yes.
Ooh.
Within the rain.
I was just saying because the rain was pretty loud to listen to.
Pocahontas. I say, you can hear Sarah in the background, and then I make the observation that she says she hates talking to people, but she's really good at it.
Oh, thank you.
I say, in every recording I've ever heard in the history of ever, she's talking to people, dead or alive.
That
Which
is
is
probably true. Thank you.
I asked about Dr. Zeller. I call him the pioneer, and then it thundered in the background, and I said,
Ooh.
thunder for suspense.
Thank you for calling out the thunder.
Then there were loud frogs. At one point I got hiccups and I said, talk amongst yourselves. Nobody did.
Dang
That's
it.
I did hear the frogs in my recording too.
I am by myself again, near Book's fake headstone. I just like to point out I was by myself and you two fools were together, so thank you.
Well, we were talking about peanuts.
Well, I felt left out.
No, I went off by myself for part of it too because I did not hear any of that talk amongst yourselves.
Well, in my recording, I can hear you two laughing in the background.
I know the history.
Loudly.
Probably the peanut butter
Yeah,
thing.
I'm guessing. And then for the record, people came to me. I was standing by myself, just quietly investigating, trying to ask Book some questions. And then I remembered he didn't talk. So I was like, could you please make noises?
Oh.
I know.
You told him to talk amongst yourselves.
Pretend you have no arms, Book.
I just realized that.
I was asking questions and I was like, oh, you probably can't talk. So can you make a noise? And then thunder for suspense. Yes. It was him.
It was Book.
The people that came up next to me, they had cat toys and they set them on the grave.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
They did go off at one point and none of us were sure if it was from the rain moving. I have no idea.
So mine, I went off and I wanted to go sit by Book's grave, but somebody was sitting there. So I kind of sat in the row, like the row behind them and just awkwardly sat there and waited.
I am near Book's grave.
Wow.
And I didn't say anything. So the first few minutes, it's just the rain and me.
That's nice.
And then I eventually did go over to Book's grave, or what they think was his grave, I should say. All right. Cemeteries 3 through 4, which they're kind of all together.
It's 3 and 4.
3 and 4, yes.
3 through 4.
Because it is the biggest area.
Does 3.5 count as the glory hole way?
Oh my gosh, we're going to have to talk about that. I started recording this. So this was when we were in the huge group, and they were like taking us. Cemetery 1 and 2, we were like in the smaller group, right?
You mean when we sprinted there?
I'm gonna get to that because I thought the lady like took off at a speed that none of us could catch up to, and there's like 40 of us. I feel like all like walking down this road, and I decided to take off running because I'm worried she's saying things I'm missing for the recorder, and I know I'm history, so I start recording as I'm running. And I left you two behind. I was just like.
We're like, oh,
take pictures because I'm running. And I literally took off.
I took a whole bunch of pictures. I don't know.
So the first part of the recording says, I'm running and I'm out of breath. And then I said, quote, I feel bad for whoever has to do the history because you're going to listen to me huffing and puffing.
Surprise.
It's me.
It's you.
Turns out it was yourself. You're welcome.
And then I said, to be fair, this lady was booking it. And I at one point go, heart rate check. She was going so fast. And I was like, nobody can keep up to her.
Seriously, though. I think we walked like 6 miles.
We get to, like I said, this is the biggest graveyard. There's lots of headstones. The majority of the patients are buried here. And she talks about glory walks. Do you guys remember what a glory walk is?
Well, there's a place between the two cemeteries that is like lined with trees. And she said in Europe, it wasn't really like taboo for people to go visit the cemeteries like on a regular basis. They would come with their families and have picnics and stay there all day and like play games and hang out. Like they were just hanging out with their family.
Yep. And they called it a glory
walks.
Yep. And I thought of an honor walk, which is something in the hospital.
It's much nicer than what we thought.
Glory holes.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yep.
I couldn't help it.
Then we got some free time to go just look at all of the tombstones. And we stayed together for this one. So I don't have a recording from it.
I do.
Yay.
We noticed that the markers only had numbers, and then we find names on the other side.
I love how we made that observation. They told us several times. We're like, oh, there's only numbers.
It's only numbers. But then if you go to the other side, it's a name. And I said, we were on the wrong side of history, and Lindsay loved it. And while she was laughing, though, a bug flies down her throat. And she said, I'm dying. And then
not the place.
Somebody said, is that insensitive to say in a graveyard? And I said, read the room, Lindsay.
I don't remember. I remember the bug.
I mean, we just walked around, observed the things. We went to what we called the glory tree. It had a hole in it.
That's when they called it the glory tree.
At the very
take pictures.
Yeah, I did. I thought there was like a monument at the very, very end. Like,
no, this is where the ravine was going to kill you. She told us.
I wanted to walk to the monument, right? And we get closer, and it's just like plumbing pipes.
Yeah, it was nothing special.
Like caution tape around it.
Yeah, the caution tape.
It's a monument
to the plumbers.
At the very end by the ravine. That's where the monument is.
The plumbers.
Yes.
Thank you for your work.
Here are some PVC pipes.
But we investigated it for Boydston.
Thank you. Debunked. Yeah, then we took some pictures. That's it.
Well, and on the 4 side, all of the gravestones are like under the grass. I don't know.
Yes.
They're flat.
They had sunken in.
Yeah. So you couldn't really see where you were. You're just walking over graves. I don't know.
Which I was really offended by, but it is illegal to dig in a cemetery or graveyard. So like they can't.
Yeah.
That's also the reason why there's lots of the tinier headstones, especially in 1 and 2. They've washed down and they just go down to the creek and they pick them up and they put them by a tree until they can get permission from the government to be able to dig to put them back in the place.
That's crazy.
The last place that we went outside was what we called the Cottage Walk, and one of the guys took us there. It was like a smaller group of people. It was just whoever wants to go can. So this is where it used to be. Like, we walked by the old cafeteria. We walked by like a couple places that are owned by different businesses. And there's a memorial here.
Is that the
monument?
The monument.
What do they call it?
And it's like where the lake used to be. So we said there used to be a lake. It's not there anymore. But
that
now
blew my mind.
There
was like
used to
full
be a
of
lake.
trees now.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, hold
And
on.
you're asking me repeatedly in this recording. You're like, so where was the lake?
I'm like, it's all grass. Trees. Explain. How can they just drain the lake?
But where did the water go?
Tell me physically, where did it go? I cannot process.
In her 5 brain, she has to know exactly how it happened.
Tell me what drain and where. I need to know.
Did they take buckets and just
That's what I'm like. That's what I'm like saying.
Is it like in the ground?
Did they just
Did
let
we-
it absorb?
Do we bury the lake?
Did the trees come up after the water went away?
Or were they growing?
I couldn't understand it because these trees were so big. Like, I'm like,
Yes.
they've been growing for years. Were they there when the lake was there? So I'm thinking back to the picture and trying to see if I saw them in there.
The memorial, though, is made of limestone, which is
The spooky stone.
it's a spooky stone.
Got it.
Yes.
And he also said that water is a very
What?
it's a strong
Wait a
conductor
bit,
for energy, and that's when he talked about the lake. And that's how we got into that.
Okay.
Because that's when he was like, "You're standing right where the lake used to be," and Sarah was just like,
No.
Her mind stopped.
No, I'm not. It's not possible.
You're wrong.
So then he takes us to the cottage on this walk, and he talks a lot about how all of the buildings have energy, but he said it's all, quote, life-based energy. Like, it's not sad. It's not depressing. Like, it's a very... It reminded me when he said, I'm feeling lively spirits.
See?
He did. He said it's very lively energy. And I was like...
I feel validated.
You do. You should. So it's all positive experiences is what he's saying, because people had a good life there. So he talked about how patients were allowed to be paid to do jobs, which was unheard of during those times. So I know we talked about Book, who was like tended to the grounds, but they had a commissary there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could like pay to get their hair cut and pay to like buy treats and ice cream that was even made on the hilltop. So pretty cool that they gave them jobs, and he talked a lot about that and how just progressive that was for that day and age. Did you guys have anything else?
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Because we went back to that main building where we started. We started at A wing, so I'll do that first. It's basically the men's ward. It's just one of the halls attached to the main building that we were in.
Yeah.
Within 1 minute and 13 seconds into my recording, I hear, I'm not sure what it is. It sounds like Sarah, but it does not sound like anything she has ever done in her life. It's like these like nonsense words.
What? And like it sounds like her voice.
It
Yeah.
does sound like my voice.
So I was
Okay.
like, is
But it's like a whispery. But it still sounds like it could be my voice, but I have no idea what I'm saying.
kind of bizarre. So I thought it's either Sarah or it's a mimic.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. It could be Sarah. I don't know.
Just singing nonsensical words. Kind of like how when you're like, Boydson, did you moan?
Turns out I think it was me moaning.
Sarah gets on Phasma. Some of the things she says is, he's going to get you. Talk. Come on in. I'm stuck. Hi. It's a big help. And Stuart. And a lot of this was, you said, in a kid's voice.
Interesting.
I asked the name of his favorite nurse, and you said Rachel. Nurse Rachel. Right there. We died in between. It's Rachel. She'll help me. Lindsay says, hi, Rachel. It sounds like you were the nurse taking care of patients. Sarah says, I was. Lindsay says, how many patients? Sarah says, 36. It's a lot.
That is a lot. They're not wrong.
And then what's strange is that like 13 minutes into the recording, Sarah herself repeats these like nonsense singy words. Similar, not the same, but similar to what I heard as an EVP, but she said she repeats it as it came out of, like she heard it on Phasma.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Hmm.
So that's what happened in A-Wing. We ended the night at 11:50. With the oracle table.
Which
Nice.
this is something new.
Explain the oracle table.
Gosh, I don't even know how to explain
We've never
it.
done the oracle table.
It's a table where you are supposedly in control of opening and closing the door to communication with spirits.
And it's like any spirits, not just Peoria spirits. It's like
Right.
spirits from anywhere can come through and can talk.
And the way he explained it, because I had the recording where he was explaining it, is that it puts you more in control than like a Ouija board.
We just treated it like an EVP session
Yeah.
at the beginning. And then this is whenever it was like pouring outside. And we were pretty glad that we were inside, but you can hear the rain on the roof. And then you can hear this like tapping, which sounds like how pipes get that tapping noise whenever there's lots of water running through them.
Sure.
And Lindsay says, I think that might be rain.
I have 2 recorders that were going at the same time while we were in what we called the dining hall, which again was just another hall off the main hall. This was at about 10:30. At about 13 minutes in, I say we are talking, and while we're talking, I can hear a very faint whisper of somebody saying, hey, followed by what sounds like somebody shushing us.
Rude.
And then lots of moving and shuffling in the room where this recorder was, which again was not near the rest of the group. Lindsay is on Phasma.
Oh,
My
gosh.
phone corrected it to Plasma. So Lindsay's on Plasma.
Cool.
And you say, who wants to know? And you say it's in a deep voice that somebody said that. So I respond, me.
I wish I could have heard that. Steve.
That's what I was going for.
Yep.
Thank you. I ask, what's your name? And Lindsay says, Ed. So Boyston and I both introduce ourselves and we say, I'm Sarah. And she says, I'm Sarah too. And Lindsay says, my name is Sarah. Mockingly.
That is so funny.
Wow.
It is not me, it's the spirits. It was Ed. Okay?
We both had that same reaction, like, oh, okay. And then I say, can you come out and say hello? And Lindsay says, no.
He made his feelings very clear.
That's really all I got from that area. We did spend some time in another section called the garage because there was a car in there.
Mm-hmm. That is why.
So again, we spaced out the recorder. The one that was further away from us, I set it on a table next to the vinegar. And I say into the recorder, remind me that this is next to the vinegar, as if the recorder could tell me. So I go back, I sit down. We start doing another plasma section.
The plasma sections.
This time Boyston was on Phasma. And before you put on the headphones, and I don't know if you remember this, but you hear somebody whisper hi next to you. So I didn't catch it, but you heard it. And this is where I enjoy some Pringles loudly. You also, while you're on, I keep wanting to say Plasma now. While you're on Phasma, you say, birthday, I don't know who, I can't even begin. And I say, can you tell me who you are? You say, Lauren. And then I say, do you see the light at the table? And you say, yep. And then Lindsay and I are talking back and forth and we say, do you know where we're from? Did we say where we're from? And then Boyson says, I don't think they said. And we say, where do you come from? And Boyson says, Bartonville.
Ooh.
At about 12 minutes in, and maybe you guys remember this too, it sounded like a chair was moving or like somebody was moving in the chair, like a rustling, crinkling sound. And it was pretty loud. I could hear it on this. Lindsay says, for the record, that's Boydston moving. And then like 30 seconds later, Boydston chimes in and says, for the record, that was not me moving.
Why did you wait so long to correct me?
Because it took her a second, I think, to process. And she said that. She's like, it didn't click that that's what you were saying, but I didn't move in the chair.
But I said it, not because I was blaming you, but because it was right by where you were sitting.
It was.
Okay, why not in the future, if things come from our general direction,
No,
you don't
I'm just gonna
blame it on us?
Did you moan? Was that your stomach?
I was just checking. Was that you? Did you moan?
That is nicer than Boyson moaned.
For the record, Boydston's moaning.
If that ever happens, call the police. That will not be normal.
Just randomly lets out some moans.
No.
It's always like...
I hope those are not impressions of me. because
That's
that's
like what we hear.
false.
Or we hear like the angry exhales, the
Or shh. It's always the shush on the.
or the growls.
They're really annoyed at us.
not me moaning.
Okay, so
No.
I heard something moving and I thought it was
We all
Boydston.
did. Well, I know you and I did for sure. I actually don't know if
She
you
had
heard
Phasma on, I thought.
it. You did.
Yeah.
And there was an open chair between us. And so then we spent several minutes trying to debunk that
Wait.
it was not Boydston moving, that it actually
Having
sounded
Boydston
like
move around.
yes, we did. But it did sound like somebody moving in that chair, like getting up from the chair. So I don't know what it was, but that's what it sounded like.
Did it make a noise whenever I was moving on
No.
purpose? Huh. I want an
Um,
apology.
I'm sorry that I assumed you moved when a noise that sounded like you moving came.
Thank you. It was not. Is that the noise that I make when I move?
It wasn't
It just
you.
sounded like a chair.
It sounded like somebody
crinkling.
adjusting in the chair.
Boydston, you're still on Phasma and you say they fell for it. And then you say, there they are, the muffin crew.
Oh, that's hurtful.
I don't like it.
And we were like,
kind of like how we are now.
Yeah. Like, is that, I don't know.
I'm taking this in a negative way.
Did we start singing the Muffin Man?
No, but we were like,
Missed opportunity.
why?
We probably felt insulted.
We did. We're like, is this because we have muffin tops?
Right.
Or like, what's happening?
We all three do, and that's hurtful.
It's the Muffin Crew.
As we're like all muffined out in the chairs, you know,
Like,
lounged
slouching.
out.
We're like,
By this
a
time, my control top is all the way down.
Rolled below the muffin.
we've been eating Pringles all
Yes.
night.
I gotta make room. Pull the pants down.
Well, we got called out.
Was it the last can of Pringles?
The muffin crew.
Sent us over the edge.
It gets funnier the more I think about it.
I hate it.
There they are, the muffin crew.
Cute.
Okay, and then by this time our time was done investigating.
Yeah, we were like, we're done at this.
Yeah.
There's
I
no
pick
coming
up
back.
I pick up the recorder next to us, and at first I thought it was you, and then I realized pretty quickly it was me. And I went on for 30 seconds singing, "It's me. Hi.
Oh, and you thought it was me.
I'm the problem. It's me." Yeah. And then we go back to my recorder, and
That's a
By the
really nice
vinegar?
compliment.
That I just pick up recorders and start singing into them. It's true.
Well, she thought
I
it was
do.
you, but it's her singing. So it must have been nice.
We're so full of it.
yeah,
That was actually genuine.
Was it? Because I know I do not have a good singing voice.
But her thinking it was you.
I thought it was
Oh,
you.
so you thought that I sounded better because it was you.
I just thought I thought it was you.
Maybe you sounded terrible.
Maybe she sounded bad. And
I was
that's
like,
why
oh,
she
God,
thought it
it's
was
Lindsay.
me.
No, just
It could go both ways. Oh gosh,
No.
Lindsay's singing into the recorder
I
again.
just knew it was your recorder, so I assumed that you picked it up. But no, it was me. It was me. I could figure it out real quick.
You complimented me and then insulted me in the next breath.
You baited me, is what you did.
I didn't have a thought either way. I just thought, oh, it's Lindsay. Nope, it's me. And I picked it up.
Oh no, this is me. This is me.
No. I was like, oh,
Do you
God,
hear
why
how
does she keep going on?
Do you
Nope.
hear
it's
the
me.
pitch? It's me.
Oh,
I was whispering. I wasn't even singing. I was
Oh,
it's me.
it's Lindsay. No, it's in tune. It's me. It's me.
Oh, an in-tune whisper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I hate everybody.
Oh, you and I sound the same. It's fine. You just have more volume.
Because I'm on the muffin crew.
We're all on the muffin crew, Linz.
Volume of sound.
Okay, thank you.
You thought like volume.
Body volume.
You've got a greater mass.
We are all part of the muffin crew. Okay.
I hate it.
I just told you I had to pull my pants down to make room for Pringles. I don't know what you think.
I was the one eating like my 5th can of Pringles in the recorder.
We were both eating into the recorder.
I had 3 packs of Nutty Bars that night. We are the Muffin Crew.
We are not making ourselves sound better.
Now I need a shirt.
Ugh.
That was it. When I walked, you can hear me walking to pick up I'm getting closer and closer to where my recorder was.
Oh, yeah.
And you hear me going, see, vinegar. Click.
Thank you.
You remembered. Good
I
job.
remembered. I was very proud of myself for remembering, obviously.
You should be proud.
There was no context, just vinegar. Stop.
You know what's the worst part about all of that is that there was a guy there
I know.
who was helping lead the group, and he heard us call ourselves the Muffin Crew.
So that was it. That was it. We wrapped up the investigation and made the trek home. We actually left maybe an hour early because
We
the
did.
weather started getting a little sketchy.
I would like to go back, but I would like to go back and like spend the entire night overnight so we could have more time. Because I feel like we did not spend a lot of time inside.
Mm-hmm.
And B, a private, as always.
Which I'm not even sure if that's possible
I don't think it is.
there. But I would like to go back up to their haunted attraction.
I'd like to go to the museum.
Oh, I
Into the
would like to
museum.
see the museum. What are you guys' thoughts on Peoria State Hospital?
It's a very cool place. I was very impressed with the staff that was running it.
Oh, yeah.
They were very friendly
Very knowledgeable.
and very knowledgeable. And they really, like you mentioned, emphasized the history and the
Mhm.
correct history, which I really appreciated. And they spent a lot of time and energy in the very beginning going through like that whole presentation. And that was part of like, I think the historian that was working there.
We got a PowerPoint presentation.
I loved that.
I
We
knew
like
you would.
PowerPoints,
I loved
especially
that.
with old timey photos.
And the spooky music.
And
Yeah.
spooky music in the background.
What do you think?
Oh yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I would go back.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for tuning in this week to our haunted investigation at Peoria State Hospital. You can always find us at thetipsyghost.com with our socials linked from there, or send us an email at thetipsyghost@gmail.com.
Please give us a 5-star rating and a great review anywhere you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate it, and it really does help.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll catch you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.